Today we are together with Hannah Beach. And first of all, Hannah, it is good to see you and welcome to our little podcast.
Thank you so much. I am really happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. I know you are deeply interested in play and what it does for parents and children and students. So,
Mhm.
can you find a good place for us to start? I don't know if we
Mhm.
should define what play is, because for
Yeah,
some
it's
people, play might be, oh, I'm playing because I play soccer every week or baseball, but that is maybe not true play. So, where are you?
all right. Okay, it's a big question, but it's true. Like when I think of play and you think of play or other people think of play, we all may have different ideas in our head. But I guess if you look at sort of what's happening right now, but I kind of answer this in a big way, is that in Western culture or cultures that sort of emulate Western type living, we've replaced play with what we would call entertainment. So play has been replaced with entertainment. So entertainment is kind of like an in breath, kind of a, whereas play was always nature's out breath, kind of the big, and it's like we got kids who are breathing like in and in and in and in and in and in. And so play, it's interesting. Like I see Cecilia here knitting. Play is not a thing. Like, it's like what I might consider play, you might not consider play. So, for example, Cecilia may find knitting incredibly engaging. Something about it might center her. It might feel quite satisfying to her to do. For others, knitting might be work. Someone might enjoy gardening or doing puzzles. For others, gardening is work or puzzles is not play. So play is very unique to your own psychology in terms of what it matches inside of you. So there's not one thing, let's say, that is play, but there are things that we can define as not play. When I think of that question, I think what people are referring to is the word free play. And free play is what children fall into in terms of what we call void moments. And I think one of the reasons right now we have so many anxious, aggressive, or shut down kids like whatever, don't care, doesn't matter, kind of like their bodies aren't filled with aliveness in their spirits, is that they've lost what we call free play. And free play, the reason we've lost it is because free play takes root in void moments, like those kind of like empty times of nothing, and devices got in the way of our void moments. So we haven't, in fact, like this is actually the very first generation of kids ever since the dawn of time, since humans have existed, that does not have a play-based childhood. This has never happened ever since humans have been humans. So I guess to answer your question, then what is play? In free play, it's when a child is not being stimulated by a device, like an iPad or a cell phone or something like that. They're not being played with by their grown up, and they are not in a structured activity like soccer, hockey, dance, etc. So in that space, a child is meant to be in a void in which they discover themselves and fall into what we would in psychology call free play. So we lost our void moments. Void moments aren't like kind of, sort of, maybe like a little bit helpful when it comes to child development. They're absolutely crucial. So it's in this void where we don't have stimulation coming in that we're meant, like, let's just go with a pre-hormonal child, the child like before they hit their hormones. What's meant to happen is they're meant to feel a little tug that comes inside of themselves, a little voice that says, oh, like, I want to go play Lego, or oh, I want to draw something, or I want to go compose something, or I'm going to go read a book, or I'm going to go knit, or I don't know, but they feel a tug that draws them into an activity. And that is where children like, it's interesting. It's where they process their world. Like we think of play often as this weird thing that kids do on the edge of life that doesn't really matter, but it's absolutely crucial. Like for example, it's where kids both practice courage, but also digest anxiety. So let's look at this, for example. If you do studies on play all around the world, and so there have been studies, and they obviously haven't studied every single culture, but vast studies which have studied tribal cultures, remote cultures, all sorts of cultures. There's one theme in children's books that rises to the very, very top. In every culture that's been studied, it rises to the top as it surfaces as the most common theme in the entire world. This to me tells us something about play. So the most common theme in the entire world in children's literature, so ages around 4 years old all the way up to around 16, which is, like, if you think about it, like, that's an absolutely massive gap to have the same theme interest, but it comes out as being orphaned. So to think about it, Harry Potter, Anna Green Gables, Secret Garden, Lion King, Batman, Superman, Oliver, Annie, Bambi, Lion King, Frozen. Like you could just go on and on. Like children's authors know this. You want a bestseller, you got to kill the parents. Like, but
Yeah.
that's kind of how it works. But that tells us something about play because play isn't necessarily fun. Like lots of play is actually not fun at all, but it's engaging, not fun, but it's a processing place. And so this is why it's so dire that it's been taken away right now from children. So a child's greatest need, like human children, their greatest need is their people. Their greatest need is attachment. So basically they're processing it one step removed through a character. Like they didn't lose their parents, the character did. And not only these characters survive, they thrive. Like Superman, they can fly around the world and take care of everybody. Or Harry Potter, they become magicians. These are attachment thriving stories. And that is one of the things that play does is it's a place where children are processing their greatest fears or practicing courage, for example. Like for me, I'm the youngest of 9 kids. I would have come home from school, been given a snack, and sent outside to play. If I'd said to my mom, "I don't feel like it," she'd be like, yeah, Hannah, it's actually not a democracy. Like, no one's really asking you. Like, out you go." She wasn't reading books on the psychology of play at that time. She was just doing what pretty much every family did at the time, which they had an intuitive understanding that children needed to have some outdoor time. We would have been riding bikes without our parents, climbing trees, doing all sorts of things, and our parents weren't behind us. We knew where they were should we need one, but they weren't with us. We would have been practicing courage every single day. The cortisol would have been rising in our systems, which would have calibrated our alarm system ready for a wounding world every single day. Now we've got kids in their 20s at the grocery store calling home because they're not sure what cheese to buy or milk to buy. They can't make decisions. They don't know how to, their body systems aren't used to the cortisol that rises and then being able to figure it out on their own. Play was all of that for children. And now we've replaced it with structured activities and entertainment. And I'm just to be clear, I have nothing wrong with entertainment or structured activities. They're just not the same thing. Yeah.
No. So a lot to dive into. I
Yeah.
was sent back down memory lane, among other things, playing in the woods with my brother, breaking my foot, and all the other fun things we did when
Mhm.
we explored, sitting in trees,
Mhm.
plucking pears and apples. And then also looking at our children today. We are in a situation as we are full-time travelers who unschool our kids that they luckily have enough time that even though there is entertainment in
Mhm.
our lives, then they also seems to have these void moments you talk about. And
Mhm.
it is different for each and every one of them. For one of
Mhm.
them, it's piano, and it's just wonderful to see when he finds that. But for people who listen and maybe not necessarily live the same life where the time is eaten up more by after curricular activities and school activities, how would you go around suggesting finding these void moments, how to inspire people to do them? Because at the same time, the fear level seems to have risen over the last many, many years. We talked with Peter Gray, who have written Free to Learn and is very interesting in this subject also. And he told about how kids are driven out to the school bus. So they do not have any, even to walk from the home to the school bus as individuals or alone or time without adult supervision.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
How do we get
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just giving
Yeah.
up.
No, I think we
Well,
do. It's yeah.
can we just talk geography for a bit? Because
Yeah,
American children are driven to the school bus.
yeah,
Mhm.
We're from a
Mhm.
culture where children are still
walking,
trusted to
driving.
do their own thing, and they have a lot of selvstændighed. What's that
Yeah,
in English? They do their own thing. You can see a 9-year-old on the train alone. You
Mhm.
see kids
Mhm.
walking to school by themselves or riding their bikes to school by themselves.
Mhm.
They walk to the supermarket and with a
Mhm.
grocery list or whatever, with their own project. I'm making a
Mhm.
cake today. I'm going to buy the
Mhm.
things I need. Um, so it's not the same everywhere.
No.
It's
And
not the same everywhere.
it's probably not even the same everywhere in the US. You probably have
I
a
would
lot of
agree.
children who
I would
do it
agree with that. Like, I
differently.
live in a pretty working class town, and there's a lot of children I still see in kindergarten walking to school where I am,
Mhm.
but depends on what neighborhood you're in or where you're living. So I do see that. But I also see, as I speak in Europe and things as well, that this is slowly moving that way as well. And that the children, for example, who used to, if you think about it, when children used to walk home from school, you often would see a child just walking and perhaps sort of talking to themselves quietly or holding a stick and kind of doing this or kicking a rock on their way home. We often see children now holding a phone, and this is happening around the world at younger and younger ages, that the empty times are being replaced with devices. And we're seeing this. Yes, I would agree that it's definitely more in North America, but we're seeing this shifting. I'm seeing this conversation happening everywhere that has phones, has cell phones being introduced to children at younger and younger ages. That we're overprotecting kids in the physical world and sort of underprotecting kids on the online world. We have the whole thing reversed. But that those void moments are being taken away. They're being eroded slowly as people adopt a phone-based childhood. But then, Jesper, you asked me a question about, but I do agree with you, Cecilia, that it is place-specific and culture-specific as well. But I see a movement that way. But I also see a cluster movement the opposite way right now, whereas people are sort of saying, okay, I can't change the culture at large, but I could change my family or my cul-de-sac or my school. And I'm seeing a massive movement right now towards families saying, can we do this together? Because right now, if I send my child outside, there's nobody else outside. How about we all put the devices away, or we all delay giving our kids phones until 14 or 16? Like, this is a huge movement right now where I am. And I just finished writing an article for Maclean's magazine in Canada about that, this movement of families coming together to say, how can we counteract this culture in our own small ways? And I think that you touched on something, Jesper. It's there's a moderation here. I think first of all, if we don't understand the importance of it, we're not going to make change because change is uncomfortable. So we're not going to try and be counterculture or do our own thing if we don't understand why play is important. If you think it's just this thing that doesn't matter, you're not gonna do it. But if I think right now people are going, oh my goodness, I had no idea what it was doing for my child's health, mental health, emotional health. Once you understand that, you may be more apt to go, okay, twice a week, we can plan nothing. Maybe on Sundays, we won't have devices, or maybe we will delay this, or maybe we will have a couple times a week where they're not in an activity. But if you didn't understand the importance of it, why would you carve out any time for it?
And
Yeah.
maybe also use, so I'm unusually quiet right now because I hear your wisdom, and at the same time, I tend to disagree a little bit with calling it out on the device. I think I know that it's very luring, but I also know that it's there
Mhm,
and it's going to be part of our lives. And we are the human beings with the phone in the pocket, not the other way around.
mhm,
So we are going to have to learn to manage this, and so are our children. I don't believe in a smartphone free childhood. I think it's better. I've made that choice. Have I or
mhm,
have we?
We have. No, 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 we have.
That if they want it, they can have it. And then our job is to teach them or help them, guide them, walk with them on the path of figuring out how to use this thing. Lots of
mhm,
adults make the same mistake of having this thing in their hand all the time. And what we can do is to create a culture where we thrive. And I also see that the smartphone, to just
mhm,
might as well be an iPad or a computer, but whatever. Now let's say
mhm. Yeah,
smartphone.
whatever. Yeah.
It's a tool and it can be used in many different ways.
Mhm,
It's a very bad habit to walk down the street with your smartphone in your hand.
mhm,
And I have to not do that. And my husband has to not do that. And so my children will start not doing that. In our family, we can be very judgmental. I think a lot of people can be very judgmental when they do people watching. And one of the things we judge is, oh, that looks like a nice walk that friend group is doing with half of them with their headphones on and all of them looking at they're walking together, okay, but no one's paying attention. So, and I
Yeah.
mean, it's just pointing it out a little bit, I think makes the change, at least for our family. So that's one thing rather than, I just think that there is in the talk about childhood and the talks for parents about how do we handle this new situation. There's so much shame and there's so much fear. And I think it's, at least in my world, it makes more sense to learn how to navigate it in a smart way and make some smart choices about how do I want to use it. And I've learned a lot from my children showing me that, hey, the phone can be play. Look, I'm playing. I'm drawing weird stuff on the iPad, or I'm using a game that's meant to do one thing to do a different thing inside a third thing to create a Wikipedia page about whatever, the color wheel. How's that not play? It's like me with my watercolor when I was a kid, just with different tools.
Yeah, that would be defined.
So there's a lot of fun, and there's also a lot of actually void to experience on the device. Suddenly you realize you're bored because it's really boring to watch Netflix all the time. I don't want to be part of installing all of that fear. I 100% agree that childhood is heavily misunderstood by the modern culture. And I think the combination of structured activity, fear, and ambition is really toxic and ruining it for everyone, children and parents alike.
Yeah, and I don't think there is any room for shame in any forms of whatever. People can judge each other for unschooling or schooling or not private school or public school or this debate or that way. And there's no room. I mean, there's so many ways to live in the world in beautiful ways. And I think it's always about curiosity. I think, though, that it would have to be said that, say, that it sounds like you're raising your children where they're not using their devices as attachment, that they're very close to you, and that you're a family that has created that you're perhaps not the average family, let's just say, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it
And
makes
so,
sense.
and I think that if you look at the research, so for example, how your children are using their phones, it would be considered play. So when children have devices, for example, like Minecraft, where you're creating things, that would fall into the category of play. But that's not how the average child uses them. The average child uses them as attachment soothers or for the dopamine. And so the dopamine that comes through their bodies so you don't get dopamine when you use a device. It does if it doesn't give you a point or a level, those sorts of things, you don't actually get the dopamine in your body. So you're actually engaging for the satisfaction of the engagement. So it would still fall into the category of play. That isn't, however, how children on average are using devices. So your children, and like my children, may be the exception. But I want to look at children as a culture as a whole. In the States, 20% of 2-year-olds have their own cell phone plans. Children aren't small adults. Their brains are developing. They require relationship with us. They require, it's to me to say, well, they're going to have to get used to it anyways, then we might as well not breastfeed babies, or we might as well not do anything. We have to accept that there's certain stages of life that children need different things. We don't go, well, they're going to have to sleep alone one day, so we might as well get used to it from day one. Well, no, when they're ready for this, then we'll get them there. There is a time and place for phones, but I don't think they're meant for 2-year-olds.
Oh,
Do you
no.
see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
we're looking at,
I didn't know we were talking about
no,
2-year-olds.
so just because children are going to have them one day doesn't mean to me that if you don't know what it feels, if we don't give them what normal feels like in their body system without dopamine, you don't know when your body system's off because you don't know yourself. If you're being flooded with the world before you have a self, how do you come to know yourself? And so one of the things that I think smartphones got in the way with is the development of identity, because we're giving them to children so young that before they know they want to play piano, or before they feel the call, like, oh, I want to draw this thing on the computer, or feel the call, they're using them as soothers, which is sort of distracting them from their relationships or themselves. So, yes, I'm not trying to scare people into not, and we do have a culture where this is part of our life, just like lots of things are part of our lives. But I also think that childhood is different than adulthood, and our brains are being wired, and the relationships that we require and the void moments that we require to come to know who we are need to also be protected. So I think there's a balance there.
Well, obviously, it's
Yeah.
always a question of balance. It can also be too much Play-Doh or too much forest walking even. In my opinion, the worst part is that there's not enough mind put into how do we want to organize the childhood of our children. It's more like putting out fires and running after trends and looking at the neighbor and I don't know,
Yes.
fixing problems that might not even be problems. And
Sure.
I think what I was just trying to, and I don't want this is not, we're not in a position even.
Yeah, no, I don't feel that.
I just don't want to put anything on that fire of let's ban the smartphone and let's be afraid of computer games and let's, kids can't
Mm.
have iPads and all. I talk to a lot of parents who feel a lot of guilt whenever their children are watching a movie or playing a tablet game or playing Fortnite or Minecraft or whichever game that is their
Mm.
favorite game. So there's all this guilt and fear, and I've been
Mm.
working with it myself. And I just think it's not
Oh, that's a
about
good point.
that. It's about how we design childhood and how we use the things we use.
Mhm.
You can also have the same analysis around health, let's say. It can also be too healthy. The smoothie in the morning can simply be too brown and too yucky. And, in a way, it
Yeah.
has to stop somewhere.
Mhm.
So it's these balances and putting enough thought into how do we want this to be and what values are we basing our life on. And
No, I agree. We can get obsessed with like this culture of perfection. My son loves Fortnite. Like I hear him playing Fortnite, he's killing himself laughing. And that's why I really think that it's I have two kids. My kids are 33 and 31 and 17. So I have a 14-year gap between number two and number three. So my I have a kid in great who's 17 at home. But I just think I think that we are need to be aware of the moderation or the fact that some of those void moments do matter. And that I actually and that it matters. And I think that we are called yeah, that's that there that we do need some moderation.
I think you're completely right. And I also think that we can also flip it and use the device as a way to create the attachment. I think this all this fear, and that's why I'm reacting to it, all this fear and all these restrictions and very often children have screen time timers on their devices and all these things. It's just creating more distance between the parents and the children. So you're taking away the thing that the kids love because you think it's ruining their life. But in doing so, it's often ruining the relation. And I think it might be a better idea to sit down and play some Fortnite with them and get on board and do some things together. It's not about the smartphone or the computer itself. It's about how you design your relationships and your life and how you design the everyday life. Is it balanced or is it not?
Absolutely, and I think if you can engage your children with whatever they're interested in, it's always a good idea. I think that what I see is a lot of families who've lost their children,
Mm.
who their children are in their rooms 24/7, and they've literally like, the families that come to me have lost their children, and so it's very hard to get in because the dopamine that comes from the device is they're addicted, basically, their children, and so it becomes it's very, very hard, but it's a very complicated issue.
Indeed, it is. But just to go back to you used the word void about it, which I think is interesting because it gives room for a dialogue where we don't need to define what is play, is display, display, display. It's about can we carve out some time that is non-controlled, if I get your understanding of void time correctly. So why is it it works to have the uncontrolled time? What is it that the research shows that happens when you just fopple? I don't know the words for it. If you wander
Yeah,
around,
I
do
hear what you're
stuff,
saying.
kick to a stick and a stone and all that.
Well, I guess there's a couple things. One, I think, is the formation of identity, but the also is in terms of brain wiring for frustration and aggression. So I guess there's two things, but I guess I'll back it up here. Okay, let me think of it this way. So I spent a good portion of my life, the vast majority of my life, working with really vulnerable girls. So a lot of the time I worked with teenage girls who'd come out of sex work, drug addiction, really challenging lives. So these girls were coming with a lot of trauma, and I developed play-based programs where kids would come and I'd work with these kids, and they'd be referred to me. Now, a lot of these girls that I would work with, now this is kind of a backwards way of going here, so just bear with me for a moment. But a lot of these girls that I would work with, their schools that they went to would be teaching them all about sexual consent. Okay? Now, obviously I agree with teaching kids sexual consent. Obviously, like that's a non like there's no discussion there. Clearly that's a good thing. But it was absolutely irrelevant for the girls that I taught, that I worked with. They would have said yes to anybody. So were they giving consent? Technically, yes. But they didn't even have a self. They didn't even know what they were giving. They would have said yes no matter what you asked, any sexual favor, any guy, any age, anything, they would have said yes. So it's like society was trying to teach them how to be healthy. You couldn't teach them because they didn't have a self yet. The self is grown in childhood through the process of feeling something inside of you and hearing something going, that's what I think, or that's what I feel, or, oh, I want to go play that video game and I like it, or, oh, that's kind of boring. I didn't like that, or I this, or I that. The problem is when kids haven't had, if they've been distracted from themselves from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to bed, they don't hear the little thing inside of them. They don't know, like they laugh at jokes that they don't really even get, or they pretend to like music they don't even like, or they dress like everybody else. Like, it's like they don't even know who they are, so they can't bring themselves into the world. Play was meant to be a place where you started to hear that voice, or in the void moments where you'd start to hear something speak to you and you start to develop a relationship with this person being you. And a lot of the kids I worked with had never, well, they never had play, or they had just they were just always on devices all the time. So even going to bed, they wouldn't have laid in bed for even 10 minutes thinking, or wondering about something, feeling sad or feeling happy or feeling anything. And so there wasn't a relationship with themselves. And so it's kind of a complicated thing, but void moments just allow us some time and space, maybe to get to know ourselves a little bit, if that makes sense, to kind of find out what we like or we don't like, or what bores us, what excites us, yeah. And so even if it's just sitting in a car for a moment, or like we were talking with Cecilia, walking home from school, or walking to the grocery store where you're thinking. A lot of people have lost this place where they actually have time to think or feel. Yeah. A lot of void moments also used to happen for kids in chores, and we see kids have less chores. So when your body's anchored, your brain would often free flow. Like if you're doing something like knitting or washing dishes or chopping wood, something that's routine that you don't have to think about because your body knows how to do it automatically. When the body's anchored, the brain can free float. We also see a lot of kids actually have a lot less chores as well, at least the kids that I was working with. So there was no times where their brain could free float, because those often also like void moments for the brain as well. So a lot of
Yeah.
kids just lost the places where they get to know who they are, really. Does that make sense?
It makes sense when I look at my own life, then I can see how often I choose to distract myself instead of just be, even though I try to be very aware. Sometimes I just distract myself with
I think
audio
that's
book or
human.
something else. It is, but also it's also really wonderful to run without listening to anything, just have time for the thoughts to process.
Music can work out, go ahead, Cecilia.
I was just thinking about, what do you think about the importance of, or the way it can unfold to anchor those feelings with someone? Let me unfold that a little bit. So
Yeah.
the feeling, I like this and I don't like that, and I want to do this and I don't really enjoy doing that. That feeling, who am I in that process? Is a process of self. There's also some sort of process of figuring out what life is in the same process. You go to bed at night frustrated because some element of life is not balanced. And I think that process of figuring that out is also part of maybe a later stage of childhood, but still. And I was just thinking, I remember that process from my own childhood. I was not in the forest like everyone else in this conversation, apparently.
I was.
But obviously, there was no smartphone. I did other things. But I remember being lonely. I remember that I had these things, but to anchor them, I think you need someone who sees you. I did have siblings and friends here and there, but it would have been really nice to have been seen with these things. And I can see what really took hold were the things that were seen. So there might have been little sprouts of other things, but as I had no one to unfold it with and unpack it with and just discuss it with, it just sort of died out. And that's another problem, I think, that the parents are distracted too.
100%. You spoke to something really, really beautiful and important there, is that I think we have a very, very attachment hungry children right now. We have relationally starved children who many of their grown-ups are distracted 24/7 or we're in a distracted culture. And I mean, this seeingness where our humans, well, first of all, it's beautiful. The fact that you felt this, though, even though it's not a good feeling to feel lonely. We all have emotion, but we don't all. Feelings and emotion are different. Everybody has emotion. They're involuntary responses that come into their bodies, and feelings are the conscious feedback that says, oh, this is what was going on in my body. In a distracted culture, not everybody has feelings. They're only having emotion because you don't actually have the feedback. So you were able to at least feel all the things, even if they weren't good feelings that felt lovely inside your body. But to have a grown-up who's able to, you know, to mirror that and to be able to hold that, we're so busy. I think about that in terms of, I think about that. So I have a very unusual family. So my parents were Benedictine monks. They had 11 foster brothers and children, and nine, they gave birth to 9 children and then fostered 11. So people thought I lived in a group home, but it was just my house. Like I just grew up in a very unusual way. But I felt attuned to by my mother. And it wasn't, I mean, there's no way she could have, like now people like have 1 or 2 children. It wasn't the type of attuning where you had to spend every moment. It was that she held space for the family in a way that I just felt the solidity of her presence. I don't know if that makes sense. I just knew she'd be in the kitchen. I just knew I knew the rhythm of the household. I knew that if I needed to go find her, I could. And I feel right now that our culture, because of whether we're so busy economically, the pressure of, as you mentioned, Cecilia, to parent in this perfect way, it's like parenting has become about the children, not just about holding space for the family. And so it's now it's like this thing you do with the child as opposed to going, well, you also have to cook and you also want to take care, spend time with your partner and you want to, for yourself, like it's no longer about creating a rhythm and a household of seasons and life. It's about this direct parenting thing. I'm going to make this child's life perfect, which is not how humans grow, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and make the life perfect. Now that I realize that something is wrong by taking something away that the child really likes. That was why I reacted in the beginning of the conversation. Oh, wait a minute. It's not good for children to spend so much time on their screens. Why don't I shut off the internet every day at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, except for on my own phone or whatever,
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that would be ridiculous.
Work.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You could probably work offline if you really had to after 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It's just,
But I also think, and I'm going to just say here, is that I also think, like when you look at an attachment-based approach looks at what does a child need, not necessarily what do they want. And so there's times if my child wanted to only eat chocolate all day, I would not think that that was good for my child. And I would say, no, this isn't good for your body. You're going to be sick, like if I had a young child. And so there's times and places where I, as a grown up with my adult wisdom, not going to let my child do certain things because I have the wisdom to know that you might think that you want that, but actually you're going to be ill. And so I'm okay with my child being sad sometimes if I make choices for them that they would not understand in that moment, if that makes sense.
It does.
From an attachment-based approach anyways, yeah.
Yeah.
I have an episode I refer to in a lot of the episodes we do. It's with a young guy called Jack Stewart who turned off the internet in his own life because it had been too much. And now he's only online something like 3 hours a week or every
Mhm.
second week. That is radical. But the
Mhm.
interesting thing he experienced was that he saw that the internet, the videos, the chatting, whatever it was a social appetite suppressant for him.
Mm.
He felt lonely. He actually, as he told us, he went to the neighbors and knocked on their door and said, "Hey, do you want to play?" Because
Mhm.
he didn't have that feeling of being together met by others,
Mhm.
which one of the big changes I have made in my life is that I went from a full-time go to day job to a full-time traveling lifestyle, um, which meant that I didn't any longer have that kind of colleagues. Instead, I had a family.
Mhm.
I was with my family all the time. And oh my God, that felt really, really good. But when I look back at it with the lens of Jack's idea of the social appetite suppressant, I can see
Mhm.
how going to work is a social or real attachment suppressant somehow. Where
Mhm.
earlier, and I'm not saying everything was better in the olden days, but if you
Right,
look at
yeah.
the cultures, then you often work with people you actually were attached to. It was family. Where
Mhm.
today I went to work and talked with 30 strangers
Mm.
somehow. I never saw any of them privately.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
it's a good point.
after this episode with him, I'm starting to consider what is that doing to our way of being families when it's covered. I didn't feel the need to call my brother or sister because I was socially fit by going to work, even
That's
though
right.
it was a substitute somehow.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing that you bring up that I hadn't really thought about yet, but that's it's true. Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah, I'm just thinking about what you said there. It's interesting. And I'm also going back in my mind to what Cecilia said, and now my brain is all abuzz in a good way. One of the things that Cecilia said a moment ago too, which is now kind of bringing that up as well, is that I think that we often hold what children love the most, we hold against them as a threat. Like we dangle it like a little thing, like we use devices like if you don't do your homework, or if you do something bad, you'll have your phone taken away, or or even sending them to the room if what they're most attached to is you. It's like, okay, well, if you're not your best self, now you can't be around me. Whatever the child holds dear, we will use as the leverage, whether that's the phone or the relationship with us or whatever it is. But it comes down to, yeah, this threat that we use, whatever a child. This is very common in Western culture, though, to hold whatever a child holds dear to them. I mean, it's like the idea of timeouts or sending a child to their room or whatever it is, whatever they hold as special to them. We're like, well, if you're not perfect, basically, I'm taking that away from you. It's,
It's just executing power, which is
yeah, it
not
is.
going to help with the relation. It's not going to
Right.
be a powerful and loving attachment with trust and where
That's
you
right.
can unfold what I was talking about before is
Exactly.
each other.
But if you don't have attachment, if you don't have it, so this is what
Don't
I'd say
work.
the average families I work with don't have it. So they're like, well, what do we do then? If your children aren't driven to follow you as a compass and there's no closeness there that drives that force between you, then they only have leverage. So they're like, what else do we do? If we don't have attachment, we have to use consequences, bribes, punishments. So because you got to, there's one or the other. Like if you don't have attachment, how do you get the children to follow, to be, do you see what I'm saying? And so what's happening is a lot of people have lost the attachment because of the children are already, let's say, attached onto their devices, or as you're saying, socially. This is why these conversations are intermingling now, and with what Jesper just brought up in terms of, let's say, the social, the other things. Let's say they're peer attached, or they're attached to work, or attached to whatever. It's like all of a sudden, how do I then draw my child back into a sense of closeness? How do I? And it's never going to be with threats or punishment or any of those things. But it's like we've lost our way. We don't know how. Like, I feel for these families, they're really at a loss. You
Yeah.
have like an hour a day with them. At the end of the day, they get home at 6 o'clock. Then there's homework. Like, our whole culture is set up to be, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it's what I said before about running around putting out fires and not taking the time. And I totally get why it's happening. I said also before that we could be very judgmental, and I'm not around this topic. I get why it happens.
Mhm.
It's just, if you can't spend some time and stop as an adult old enough to have children and think about what matters, and
Mhm.
think about how those things that matters can take center stage in life, get enough of your attention,
Mhm.
well, then we have a real problem. Everyone's heard the stones in the jar analogy. You put in the big stones first, and then the smaller ones, you shake it. And at the end, you can still add a glass of red wine, my mom would always say. But whatever, the values are the big stones. And if we're just, I mean, I'm saying this because you said homework, and actually, homework does not matter at all. If you
No,
don't
I'm
have a
with you on that.
relationship with your child, if you're not thriving, if there is fear, if you need to take tablets to sleep, if you're, afraid of whatever, your marriage or your finances, it really doesn't matter at all. And yet, families run around to make sure that the homework is done.
I know the whole thing, it breaks my heart, actually. I think about this the other day. I was talking to somebody who's getting married, and I'm like, we spend more time planning a wedding than we do our marriages. We spend more time, like, not thinking of like what type of family culture do we want to have? Like, how do we want to live as people together? How do we want to live in relationship with each other? And I think that I'm a single mom. I don't have some idea of what this has to look like, a certain type of family. Like, I feel like I do this myself as a mom myself with how I want to raise my child. I'm very intentional, but I also feel very privileged to be able to have that space within myself and to be raised in a way that I'm wanting these conversations, if that makes sense. I feel like we need to slow down and be able to be intentional with what type of children, what's important.
Mm.
We're so afraid to be counterculture. We're so afraid to this fear culture in terms of, if you don't get into the right school, or you don't do this, or you don't do that, and you don't. And I just, we've really lost track, I suppose,
But
of the
even
essence of humanness.
we're afraid, but we're also highly distracted. We can't
Yes.
focus. Even if you stop to think about it, you forget that you're thinking about it, and then you do something else. It actually takes some mental effort to figure out what's important. It's not the same thing for everyone. Or maybe it is the same thing for everyone. When I do these analysis with my clients, it's very often the same things, but it doesn't look the same. The
Mhm.
execution is not the same. So we might all say health is important, and our children are important, and our friends are important, and whatever. It's somewhat, and then maybe you have some passions you want to unfold, and you want your finances and basic things to
Mhm.
be healthy.
Mm.
And those first five ones are very often the same in the headline, but how you want that to look and how to unfold it is very much not the same for everyone. And to stop and think about that for a while, and then get to that point where it becomes actionable, where you can say, okay, I'm putting that weekly walk in the calendar. We are going to take out 5 hours every week, and everyone's coming. We're driving to the mountain and we're walking 10 kilometers. We can bring the phones to take pictures, but we're talking, walking, drinking water, looking at the view. That's what we're doing. Then you have to do it. And
Yeah, and I
it's a
think,
long
yeah,
journey to figure out for our family, this is what would work. And to actually put it in the calendar, get everyone on board,
I know
meet
it's
ready at 5 o'clock in the car, all these things.
yeah.
It's not done in a
I
hurry.
agree with you, Cecil. And I think the thing is, for me, and every family is different, I have to embed a structure for that. Because if I'm exhausted, I'll give you an example, like the family dinner, for example. There are certain cultural practices that used to be embedded throughout history. Eating together was one of them, because eating is not just about getting calories. We know when humans co-eat and have eye contact, that sort of a bit of attachment glue happens. That's why usually when you go on a first date, most people go for a drink or a meal, because our dating rituals follow the science of attachment. We never used to have to think about eating together. It was something people did no matter what. Like it was, sorry, that's loud. I can hear big loud foghorn right now. Okay. A ferry's going by. I live right on the water. So, but now it's like you have to think about it. So just in North America, just under 9% of families eat together on a regular basis. I'm not judging this. I'm just saying this is the way it is.
No, that's wild. Yeah.
But if you think about that, there used to be an anchor that you did, sort of like having a shower or brushing your teeth. You just do it because everybody else does it. It's just a norm in our culture. There used to be an anchor where people gathered daily every day. We don't have this anymore. Now you have to think about it. Do I feel like eating together? Do I not feel like eating together? Like it's just not an anchor that holds people close. And so we might have to do, as you say, develop okay, once a week we're going for a walk together as a couple or a family, or myself on my own, whatever. But if I don't embed it as a practice when I'm too tired, I'm not going to do it. If I don't have it as a kind of like the family dinner, if I don't make it part of my ritual, I'm not going to do it. If I don't feel like it, I'll do it when I feel like it. I won't. And then it's sort of like, it's like a chicken and the egg problem. It's like, I don't feel like it, so I'm not going to do it, but I'm distracted all the time, so I'm not going to feel like it. It's like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is about establishing a culture, and that can be done.
yes.
It can be done to make a decision. And of course, we have to be patient. If we have never had the culture of having family dinners and we decide, well, that is going to be our glue, we're eating every day anyway, everyone. So why don't we make this change? We sit
Or
down.
once a week, or whatever works for your family.
If that is what you decide to do, it's not done in one day. It's not done by saying, now we do that.
Oh my
Maybe,
gosh.
I don't know, 3-4 months of doing it every day before it becomes a habit, before it becomes really nice,
Like,
before you know the way of, oh my God, the dinner table. We could talk about that for about 3 hours, the whole culture of dinner tables, but it's a
Yeah.
really big deal. We're
It is.
traveling the world. We're living with a lot of different people, meeting people from all kinds of cultures,
Co-living a lot.
co-living with other families, moving in and out of different social circles. And we happen to be a family dinner family. We sit down, have a meal together at least once a day. It's just been such a journey to see how that's done and not done in
Mhm.
families. And surprisingly overwhelming for us, because this is such a big deal, big part, like not even a big deal. It's such a, like brushing your teeth. Of course you do that.
Yeah, it's just normal for
You
you.
come home, you close the door behind you. Whatever things you don't even think about. Of course you do that.
Was a revelation Cecilia brought forth when we went from our oldest daughter. We have 4 kids, 2 boys, 2 girls. Our oldest daughter went to a alternative school, and we had the 2 middle ones in a Waldorf kind of institution, Steiner in Europe. And then we started home educating, or having them at home, after Cecilia had cancer and survived. Long story short, she's still here. Yes. But one of the changes, I can see her. Yes. I'm not imagining.
What's
No.
the question?
It's not a question. It's a story about one of the things you pointed out that changed in our life was that as the kids were home all the time with her, the need for the dinner as a attachment reconnection became less important. But for me, who was at work, going to work, the dinner was still very important. So it was fun to see how it had less of an importance because it was there. And now, as they have grown up, then we have reintroduced it as a more important
So
period.
what I said back then was just that because we don't go in each our separate direction every morning, there's no attachment wound to be healed in the afternoon.
Yep.
And therefore, we don't necessarily have to sit around the dinner table, all of us, every day. And what I also said back then, just reminding you,
Yes, please. Better explanation
just
coming.
because it feels like, I
No,
mean, we've
no, no.
always had to sit down dinners.
Yeah,
But what I said was, it's not important that this is the moment the children are eating.
that was it. Yeah, it
Yes.
was just sitting
They were
together and being.
small, and it didn't matter if they'd had a huge sandwich before or they had some snacks in the sofa after, whatever. It was
Yeah.
about spending some time. And sometimes in the long Scandinavian summer nights, maybe we didn't go home. We spent all night in the park instead, had a pizza, whatever. So it's in our, so I think the Scandinavian culture is really holding the fort of trying to to
Yes.
to be still with the good childhood. And one big deal in our culture really is the family dinner. You sit down, have dinner. 6 o'clock is the right time to do it for everyone, apparently.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
early.
And I love that you brought in that context. I mean, and I also have same with Tamara, who wrote my book, was she homeschooled her children, and I homeschooled. Well, my youngest went to a Waldorf school 1 day a week. It was like a farm one, and then he was home with the other days. But it's like we the necessity for those gatherings wasn't the same at those times because we were together all day and we slept together and it was just whatever. But as my children age, there's times and places. But sometimes I have to remember that the larger culture is not really like that for most people that I work with. The larger culture, people are gone all day and very free floating from each other all the time. And then I'm like, okay, let's count those points of connection. That's where culture matters, when a culture has norms that gathers people for not just for the average person, if that makes sense, who's living in that way, because the children then get lost in the mix and the closeness of we all float away from each other, basically.
Hannah, I have a thought and then a question. I think that a lot of people don't put in these void moments anymore, or they have been eaten up by entertainment, which make a lot of us less good at playing, maybe. And then I had the thought about alcohol as a social glue, that it maybe helps people get this, oh, now we do not need to do anything. Now we can just relax and have fun. So my thought is, as we are becoming less play orientated as people, are we then drinking more? It might be a far out idea, but I was just thinking if addiction and drugs and alcohol
I
was
don't
on
know
the
the
rise.
answer. I would be lying if I could tell you I know any research on that. I have no idea if we're drinking more than we were before the smartphone was invented. I honestly have no idea. But it's an interesting link that you put there. Perhaps it allows, I mean, liquid courage allows us to free our bodies a bit more. Perhaps we do sometimes need more to let loose because our bodies are so wound up tightly. But I honestly don't know for sure the answer to that
No, it
question.
was also just a fun
Question. I
thought
like the
in
question.
my head. Yeah. Then we'll go to my question. So for people listening to this, thinking, oh yes, let me try to create some free playtime void moments for my kids. I will send them outside the door. Part of me is just thinking, oh my God, that would fail. How do you set yourself up not failing? And it's just like, go out, play. And the kids would just be like, but we have never grown up in that culture. So what are we doing? So my question maybe is then, with the work you do and your interest in this, when you are guiding people, how to start?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'd say start small. One of the things that Celia said, you don't go from 0 to 100. And even just recognizing something is important. You may lean gradually more into that. I'd say start small. I mean, whether it's just having one morning a week, let's say Sunday mornings, where you just have no devices and you sort of allow the family to unfold in the way. Because most families that I work with are on devices all day, every day from morning till night. So it's going to feel weird at first. and accept that it's going to feel a little uncomfortable at first. But I would also say the grown-ups have to do the same thing as the children in that experience. So everyone kind of would put it away at that time. That when the child says to you, maybe, I'm bored, I'm bored, I'm bored, it's really important in that moment, if you have a young child, like I'm talking about young children here, who haven't ever played before. I work with a lot of children right now in schools who've never played in their life other than on a device. So how are they gonna even know what to do? Like, when you say you can go play, they're like, "What does that even mean? What am I supposed to do?" So often I would just say, "Oh, your brain is just beautiful. It's gonna come up with an idea. If you just listen really carefully, your body's gonna come up with an idea, and when it does, you can go do something, and in the meantime, it's just fine to just roll around the floor for a little bit or, like, do whatever." And we do it in small little bits, just small little moments. And in terms of the outside thing, this is where I see families coming together right now in a really beautiful way, because they're just saying we can't send our child outside to play. There's no, unlike Scandinavia, which this is still very vibrant in the culture where children are outside play, where that isn't happening as much here. Families are doing it now together in big ways. So they'll get together with the people on their street and they'll have a meeting and say, we'd like our children to be able to go outside, but there's nobody else out there with them. What if we all did this together? And so that your child's not the only one sort of in that experience by themselves. So I say start small, start in little ways. Don't have some grandiose sort of, plan for it, and do it gently, in little bits. And for yourself as well. Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's a big deal
Yeah.
to face how much it's the same for the adults.
And recognize that play is not always fun. So and that's where we see the link. I know we don't have any more time to talk, but that's where we see the link in lowering aggression in children who've had play. And that's why we're seeing, in Canada anyways, a massive movement to change our playgrounds at schools to what we call loose parts, where there's things you can drag and move and like logs and things. But play, like, could be knitting. Play may be doing something frustrating that's hard to build and it's frustrating. Like, our kids don't, play looks like many things. And so just allowing that vast experience of play, not this uniform idea of like kids like necessarily running around. Like it looks like many things and every child's unique. So what one child might find play is very different than another child.
Perfect. I think this is a good place to round off the episode. Hannah, for people who want to go more into your work and what you do, and if they want to contact you to work together with you, where do they find you? And if you also can mention your book and the other things you have done.
Sure. They can find me at hannahbeach.ca, which is HANNAHBEACH.ca. So hannahbeach.ca. And yeah, I co-wrote the book with Tamara, Dr. Gordon Neufield's daughter, Reclaiming Our Students, looking at how our schools can change. And it also has sections in there for homeschoolers and unschoolers as well, and parents, how we can change education to be more human and have more space for expression and individuality and growth and authenticity. I'm writing a book right now for parents, and I have a children's book coming out January 23rd. So my children's book is called Sometimes I Feel That Way Too. It's a little boy who's 5-ish, and it's about,
You killed off the
normalized.
parents,
I
as you
was
said.
going to ask the question,
Yeah.
is he an orphan?
He's not an orphan. He's not. So it won't be a bestseller.
No, no, you can still edit it. Just kill them off.
Oh, it's just a little children's book. It's a picture book. It's
Okay.
not a long book. But yes, orphan books, my goodness. Yes. But yeah, I'm diving deep into the world of play and family. And I'm writing a book right now on what children, looking at what kids need. I'm writing it with my son, actually, my eldest son, the one that lives in Slovakia. He lives in Bratislava.
That sounds wonderful. Thanks a lot for your time. It has been a really interesting conversation.
Me too. Thank you. You both got me thinking about things I'm going to enjoy processing across right now while I'm about to go do the dishes. I'm going to think, I've got lots to think about today. Thank you for giving me that gift.
Thank
Oh,
you.
yeah, it was fun. And likewise.